Well, we're back from our epic trip through the US to go visit the total solar eclipse down in Dallas. It was an amazing trip. We covered 14 different states, 83 superchargers, and 9,000 miles, or just over 14,500 kilometers. It was just an amazing trip. We stayed in hotels all along the way. And so we got to see a lot of places that I'd worked in the past. So the question everybody has asked me in the past is, can you road trip in a Tesla? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. It's pretty simple. If you use the navigation that's provided with your Tesla, you just have to put in the destination where you're going. There are other applications like a better route planner that works really well. But in my case, I used both, but I relied on the Tesla one. And the one main reason was on our second day when we were traveling from Redding, California to Las Vegas. We were just about to Las Vegas and we stopped at Eddie's Candy, I think it's called, to charge. And it was telling us that we had to charge to 90%, and it just made absolutely no sense. I'm not sure exactly why it was doing it, but then we just followed the instructions and charged to 90%. It was, it was only just over 100 miles from that candy store to Las Vegas. And then when we unplugged and started driving, I looked at the route that it was taking us, and there was a massive accident on the highway, and it was routing us through the Mojave Desert. And so without that additional charge, we would not have made it. And in fact, we were seeing a lot of Teslas pulling over to the last charger before the accident and charging, and probably because they've done that trip multiple times and knew that they could make it from LA or wherever they were going from to Las Vegas. And at that point, they would not have probably had enough charge to go through that desert. So we drove by that charger and it was slammed full with cars. So we were very fortunate that the Tesla app gave us that prior knowledge to know that that road was completely shut down for, and I believe it was like 8 hours. So it saved us. And at that point, I just said, I'm just going to rely on Tesla. And it works really well. You set a destination and it picks all the superchargers along the way, and then you're good to go. Worked really well. A couple of times it actually changed the supercharger that we were destined to because we had excess range, and so it just pushed us along to the next one and making us not to have to stop at that charger. So that happened on our last day coming back into Seattle. So that worked really well as well. So I 100% relied on that. It would pop up a message. It says you have enough energy to continue your trip. It also notifies you on the app. So if you happen to be having a lunch or something like that, works really well. A couple things that I just want to point out is if you're doing like a day trip, to somewhere and back, it's probably a pretty simple trip. So if you're planning to go down from Vancouver to Seattle or Portland, it's a pretty easy trip. You go down there, you may charge once, and then when you're at your hotel, hopefully you have like a level 2 charger. If not, then in the morning or in that evening prior, you would charge your car to come back. So um, on these multiple day trips, like we did 23 days, we had to plan a little bit. So one of the things that you would have to do is, if you had not selected a hotel with a level 2 charger, then the choice you have at the end of the day is to stop at a supercharger near your hotel and charge up to about 80% or 70, 80%. Or in the morning, drive to that, most likely the same supercharger, and charge to whatever is required to make it to the next stop, according to the Tesla app. So 99% of the time, we just charged at the end of the day near our hotel. We did have a couple hotels that did have level 2 chargers, and so we took advantage of that. And I would say if you have that opportunity to have a level 2 charger, then it's pretty nice. You just pull up to the hotel with 5%, plug in for the evening, and when you leave, you've got that, whatever it is that you've set, your 80, 90, 100%, whatever it happens to be. And that's ultimately, that's the best traveling that you could have, is to arrive with a very low state of charge at a hotel that has a level 2 charger, charge, and then leave first thing in the morning. That really was nice. The stopping or planning to stop at the end of the day, some of these days we had were like 13, 14-hour days. So that was kind of tiring to have to stop and charge. And I can understand how people have to, when they don't have chargers at home, how they feel that they have to charge all the time. So anyway, yeah, a couple other things I'd highly recommend that you bring with you is a coffee maker if you're staying in hotels for multiple days. The coffee that they have in these hotel rooms is just horrid. So I knew that from my traveling in the past. So we brought our coffee maker and our Starbucks coffee, fresh ground, and we made coffee first thing in the morning, and then go down for breakfast and have whatever coffee is available. So that was really nice. If you're particular on your pillows, then maybe bring along your pillow. I brought my Tempur-Pedic pillow with me, so that was pretty nice. And then for during your traveling, a couple things for the car. One is some way of cleaning the windows. So at each stop that we had, I just pop the hood, bring out my Adams window cleaner, and uh, rub off all the bugs, which came off pretty simple, and then just clean it. And I did that at every stop. So we had pretty clean windows all the way along. I used an entire bottle of window cleaner on this trip. So I would bring something like that for sure. And then if you want to wash your car, um, you can stop off at a local uh, car wash if you want. I did that a couple times. When it was fairly clean and just needed to be lightly cleaned, I did have uh, no water cleaner spray, so like a detailing spray that I sprayed on the car, wiped off, and that kept the car very clean. So we were lucky. It hardly rained. A couple days it rained, and so it worked out pretty well. So the true question, can you travel on a multi-day trip, like 23 days, 9,000 miles? Uh, we used like 82. We used 82 superchargers along the way, so we racked up a lot of those, and it worked out really well. Now, has this affected the estimated range of my car? Well, according to Teslafy, it's exactly the same as it was prior to this trip. Again, 9,000 miles. I utilized superchargers uh, for the entire trip. I didn't worry if I was charging to 80, 90, or 100%. I did actually charge to 100% a couple times. There's a couple legs across Texas and uh, from Memphis to Texas there, that even Tesla was recommending charging to 97%. And in fact, there was one leg where I charged to 97% and I arrived at the charger with 3%. Now, again, the problem that you'll have in the United States, at least, not something that we have in Canada, is speed. These highways are rated, or speed limits sometimes are at 80 miles an hour. If you're driving 5 or 10 over, you're doing close to 90. A lot of the way on this trip, I was doing 85 miles an hour on average throughout most of the highways, and people were just flying by me. It wasn't like I was the one speeding. It was, um, yeah, 85. And so over that entire trip, my average energy consumption was 307 watt hours per mile. If I can change that to uh, a Canada setting, so the setting that I would use, which is really not bad, 191 watt hours per kilometer. I think I had brought my average down quite a bit by driving slower over the last year. So I think my average was about 180 watt hours per kilometer to average 191, with most of the trip going 80 to 95 miles an hour is pretty good. I'm super happy with the economy. And again, according to Testify, um, this trip of 9,000 miles cost me $900, and that's in Canadian funds. So $900 Canadian. Now, I'd like to thank all my viewers and supporters of this channel, and especially those that use my referral code. I use those referrals to get free self-driving for this trip, and I added like 28,000 kilometers of free charging, which I've used up quite a big chunk of it on this trip. So the cost of the trip is really just the hotels and food and stuff like that. The driving of the car was absolutely free, except for a couple of chargers that I had used at a hotel. There was a level 2 charger at the Phoenix Hotel, and that's a thing that you might want to check if you're going on a trip, is to see if that hotel has free level 2 charging, because I got charged $22 to charge my car overnight at one of the hotels. And not a big deal, because that was really the only charge I had during this trip for charging. So again, I'd like to thank all the supporters of this channel for the opportunity to do such an amazing trip.